Number one, if you're taking notes, we need to maintain praiseworthy motives. He's already said, right, that the conscience is clear. He knows he did the right things. He's acted appropriately toward the Corinthians. But he says here, I want you, when everything is revealed, as he said in 1 Corinthians, all the motives and the secrets of men's hearts will be revealed. I want you to look and say, in my evaluation, you know what, I'm proud of you. And I want to be able to look at you and say, I'm proud of you. We want us both to get through this with praiseworthy words from the Master. And we would sure like Christ to say about my motive, right, it was good. So we need to think about all the conflicts we have, and in the middle of it all, stop and say, okay, let's think. What is my motive? Is God going to say your motive was good? Well, to say that, right, I need to know what Paul's thinking. So turn over to chapter 5, because he gets to this as he thinks about the day of standing before the Lord. And he speaks of it in the 5th chapter of 2 Corinthians. But here's what he says here, starting in verse number 9. And you can see the first 8 verses of this. We're dealing with this analogy of a tent being our earthly body and a building being our resurrected body. And he says, I'm here in my tent, and then I'll be with Christ and one day get my permanent body. And he says, yes, verse 8, we're of good courage. We would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. But here's the deal. Whether we're at home or away or anywhere, it doesn't matter the circumstance. We make it our aim. Here's the intention, here's the motive, to please him. And why is that important? Well, because one day, God's going to be able to look at our lives and not only see the actions, but he's going to look at the motive. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he's done in the body, whether good or evil. Now, there's no condemnation for those in Christ, but you as a Christian are going to stand before what we call here the raised platform, the judgment seat. The Greek word is bema. That's why Christians call it the bema seat of Christ. The judgment seat of Christ, where he is now going to evaluate your lives. He'd already talked to the Corinthians about this in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, that our lives are going to be evaluated. And he's going to look at things in your life that he's going to consider valuable and praiseworthy, gold, silver, precious stones, and things that were just a waste. Now, you going to hell for that? No. Purgatory for that? No. But all of it's going to be like wood, hay, and straw. It's going to be burned up. And you can suffer loss over that. That's not the suffering of the torment of hell or some fire of purgatory. But that's you saying, man, I blew it. And you're going to have to give an account for that. You're going to stand before God, and he's going to reveal all this. And so he says, I want to make it my aim to please him. Now I want my attitudes, my actions to please him, but I want to make sure my intent is right. I want to please God. So when you think about people and you think, okay, I got some problems in my life. Some of them are based on facts that, I get it. You've got your conviction about something that's, I know, objectively false. I have my conviction about something that I know is objectively true. We're on different teams. Goal lines are clear. And that's easier. At least we know, right, that there are enemies of the truth, and I'm a proponent of the truth, and I get all that. But especially within the church, a lot of factions, a lot of factionalism, a lot of groups fighting each other, a lot of people with misunderstandings, and relationships aren't good because there's this misunderstanding, people casting aspersions for all the wrong reasons. And I need to ask myself the question in the middle of that kind of storm. I need to say, well, are my motives right in treating these people? Do I intend to please God with how I treat those people? Now, if I said, how am I going to please God? Well, the Bible's clear, right? The whole commendation of God comes from me keeping his commandments. Now, last week, you might remember we were dealing with our last text there in verse 12. We looked at the end, at least, in Hebrews chapters 9 and 10, which could all be one chapter. But we said there, we know there's a lot of rules, including bringing your animal to church, having it sacrificed. If you're doing the DBR with us and Leviticus right now, I mean, this is a lot, right? A lot of bloody verses we're dealing with. And all of this reminds us that the ceremonial laws we quoted last week from Hebrews 10, verse 1, it's all looking forward to the reality of Christ. Doesn't mean the rules go away. It means the ceremonial rules go away. We don't have to bring an animal to church. We don't have to slaughter that animal. We don't have showbread. We don't have candelabras. We don't have the altar. We don't have a priest with all of his garb on. We don't have all of that. We don't even have the dietary restrictions or the day of the week defined for us. All of that, gone. But all the moral law of God, still there. And God says, here's what I stand for. Here's who I am. And if you want to please me, you should be holy as I'm holy. You should be different than everyone else, just like I'm different from everyone. I set the standard. And if I were to say, great, now here's the catalog. I'll give you the long list of all the things that God says you got to do. Well, that would take a long time, make the sermon a lot longer.